Hello, and welcome to this special edition of WIN. I'm your host, Laverne McGee. Thank you so much for joining us, to our viewers around the world, in the Caribbean, Trinidad, and of course, diaspora and friends in New York, Miami, Toronto, wherever you are. We appreciate you joining us for this very special edition of WIN. Our guest today is well known if you follow Trinidad and what's happening there. Gary Griffith is no stranger to citizens in the diaspora. He wears many hats. Of course, he is currently the political leader of the National Transformation Alliance, and he joins us from Trinidad right now. Thank you for joining us, and welcome, Gary.
Thank you very much, Laverne. This is indeed my pleasure.
We're so happy to have you. And as I was telling you, we have people who are watching from everywhere. So I just want to give a little bit of a background because you're in the news right now. Lots to talk about. You've got a lot going on that we, of course, want to talk about and hear your thoughts on. But I want to give people a little bit of background because they need to know the depth of your experience and expertise and what you are bringing to Trinidad and Tobago. So let's start by talking about your background. Of course, you were the commissioner of police.
Yeah, well, it all started off. I was in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. I was commissioned after I graduated from the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, in the United Kingdom. I spent 17 years in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. I was the when I as soon as I returned from Sandhurst, I went straight into the attempted coup. So I was the youngest officer in the attempted coup. I served in the United Nations mission in Haiti. I was the first Trinidad and Tobago military person to return with a UN peacekeeping medal. I worked as the military attaché to two prime ministers and a president. I then became an opposition senator. I've been a national security advisor to the prime minister. I've been minister of national security and commissioner of police for 3 years. And now I'm as you said, the political leader of the National Transformation Alliance.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely, your accomplishments are so valuable, and you should be commended on that. And so, I wanted people to understand that background who don't know, because you are taking a very strong stand on crime. That is clearly your passion. That is clearly what you've been fighting for, and it sometimes gets you in hot water with people because you have, sometimes what some people may say is extreme views on it. But that is something that you feel strongly about. So tell me why and what your passion is. And there is a crime problem in Trinidad and Tobago. Tell me what you want to do about it, what you think you can do about it.
Yeah, well, really and truly, just to fix Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, the reason why I've been in the military, in politics, as a commissioner of police, and back into politics is really to serve my country, and that is why on most occasions, when persons become enlisted in the military, it is the most noble of all professions. So since then, I've been prepared to sacrifice my life for my country. I've been in situations where it has been is reached to that. And in this, what we are in right now, it is not just about national security. Almost every arm in Trinidad and Tobago, in the state, it has virtually collapsed. So what I use would be basic principles of leadership, management, measuring performance, and accountability. And the same way I was able to use that to transform the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, I intend to transform all arms in the public service. There have been concerns about water, education, health, the economy, sport, tourism, culture. Almost every single thing has virtually collapsed. And it has to do with, bad administration, bad governance, lack of leadership, sometimes corruption, bitterness, hatred as politicians when they get in a position rather than trying to unite the country. So my concept is to find ways to unite the country rather to divide, try to make the country productive rather than others who try to destroy the country. And as it pertains to national security, they are desperate times. I sure everyone who's here listening would be fully aware of the situation Trinidad and Tobago is in. It was not like that all the time. If you could go just up to 2000, when I was military attaché to the prime minister and aide to the president, we had less than 100 murders per annum. I mean, that is just about 20 odd years ago. After when politicians started affiliating with criminal elements, giving them state contracts, which has been the biggest issue, and then we moved from 100, and then 8 years later, we moved to over 500. And now in the last 2 years, it has been the highest rate in crime in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. But it can be, we can be saved. Just 2 years ago, as commissioner of police, we had the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. My last year as commissioner was 342 murders for the year. The last time we had that would have been about 2004. So it can be done, but you can't do it with kid gloves. That has been the issue, just as you said. There are persons who benefit from crime. There are those who are sympathetic for criminal elements. There are those who are family members of criminal elements. So the things that I have done by forming elite tactical units, similar to what you will see as SWAT, using technology, covert operatives, getting the public to work with the police service, it pegged back the criminals. And now we're in a situation where in Trinidad and Tobago, we are at virtual war. We have thousands of gang members with automatic weapons, which can, as I said, kill 35 persons in 3 seconds. And that's why when I brought the concept of using the Anti-Terrorism Act, which is what Ecuador have done, it is because we're at virtual war. We're in armed conflict. We have lost over 4,000 citizens in this country in the last 10 years by gun violence. If that is not a situation of crisis, I don't know what is. So desperate times, and we need to have desperate measures, and those are the options that I would bring to the table.
So, Gary, I don't think anybody would argue with you on the statistics. They wouldn't argue with you on what's happening. People can see it in front of their eyes. Nobody can argue with your credentials. You're certainly qualified to talk about this. Why then is there this appearance of battling, or why is there obviously you filed a lawsuit against the Minister of National Security? Tell us about that and why you did that.
Well, they lie. They lie. The PNM has the one thing that the People's National Movement they are good at, especially the hierarchy. They can't perform. So what they do is you continue to say the same lie over and over. A government virtually was removed because of lies. That, if you recall, there was something called email gate. When you have a prime minister take written, typed documents, send it in parliament, and read it out with all type of accusations involving the then prime minister, the attorney general, myself, with total lies about assassinating a reporter. Any other country in the world, how can a man like this then become prime minister? He can't be trusted. But parliament is the one place where you can lie and read out lies and not be sued. That is what they try to do. So in my situation, because what I have done is now reignited what is known as the third constituency in Trinidad and Tobago. So there's always the UNC and the PNM, similar to the Republicans and the Democrats. The difference in Trinidad and Tobago is that there's that third group of individuals who are neither PNM or UNC, and they will shift depending on what they see. I have rebuilt and rebranded that group, that organization. Every time that political party works with the UNC, PNM, they are annihilated. It happened in 1986 at 33-3 in the election. It happened in 2010 at 29-12. Anytime that third party goes on their own, it spreads the gap and allows the PNM to win by an even larger margin, such as 1981 when the ONR went on their own, 1991 when the NAR went on their own, and 2007 when the Congress of the People went on their own. And then in a two-horse race, the PNM will usually win every time against the UNC, except one occasion in 2000, and that government lasted just a few months. So what I have done is put a lot of fear in the hierarchy of the PNM. That is about 150,000 votes. It may not seem like much where you guys are from, but that is about 20-25%, and that flips over a lot of what is known as marginal seats in Trinidad and Tobago, and that is what will cause the defeat of the PNM. The local government election just took place, was 190,000 votes with the NT and the UNC together against the PNM's 130. That's a 60,000 gap. In general election, you get 2 times the amount. That was a 30% voter turnout, so you're going to get about 120,000 difference, which is the exact amount that the PNM lost by in 2010. So because of that, what they have to do is to target me, lie about me, and every time they do it, I'm going to take them to court. I have Keith Rowley in court for making accusations saying that I was corrupt. I have Fitzgerald Hines, the minister, for lying and stating that I brought in component parts to change semi-automatic weapons to automatic, which is a criminal offense. I have reporters in court for making misleading comments about me. What Keith Rowley was trying to do is to read out an audit report that was littered with lies. I was never even interviewed. So it was the typical PNM. It is rumored, we have heard, and it has been brought to our attention. That's why 3 years later, no one has ever been arrested, because there was never any corruption. There were lies. He wanted to go to Parliament to read it, where it says I would not be able to sue him. And I said, you're not going to get away like what you did with Emailgate. If you want to say something about me, stop being a coward. Come out in public and say it. And that's why I have several of them in court, because thankfully The one institution in Trinidad and Tobago that has not been manipulated by the government is our justice system. We have the Integrity Commission, where an individual, the Integrity Commission, on 3 occasions they have investigated the Prime Minister. Bam, he's now removed. The Industrial Court, the head, had some issues with the government. Bam, she's been removed. The Commissioner of Police, there was a deliberate attempt for me to try. They gave me 40 million TT, put it into the police account, and told me, use that, hire attorneys from the United Kingdom, make them special reserve police to have them target and arrest political opponents of the government. Anywhere in the world you can see that's dictatorship. I refuse. I was removed as well. So that is what continues to happen. It's known, I call it democratic dictatorship. And because of that, there's a major fear factor by the PNM at this time. So what they have to do is to try to smear my name. But you would have heard it, and my final point on that, Patrick Manning said it. He said it in Parliament, that when Keith Rowley is angry, you see hate, you see bitterness, you see a man totally out of control if he doesn't have his way. He couldn't have his way with me. The bully is always the biggest coward. So I have stood up to him. I am going to expose him for what he is, for who he is, and I am going to ensure that that representation of that third constituency can now have representation in the next government.
Well, Gary, these are very strong words, and we want to dive more into this, but we do need to take a commercial break, so we want everybody to stand by. You're watching a special edition of WIN. I'm your host, Laverne McGee, and I'm so happy to be joined by Gary Griffith, who is talking to us about the state of crime and other things in Trinidad and Tobago. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Whatever the time of year is, I get my hydration from Dave's coconut water. Dave's, quenching your thirst all year long.
Look, we there, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for staying with us. Welcome back, everyone. You're watching WIN. I'm your host, Laverne McGee. We are here with Gary Griffith, who is sharing with us his views and very strong words about the current government of Trinidad and Tobago. Gary, you have very strong words, in fact, even for the Prime Minister. I got to ask you, do you fear for your life? You're speaking out.
Not politically. When I was Commissioner of Police, there were 43 death threats on me. 43. The special branch, when they did, that equates with the Secret Service there. They stated that I am the person that is at the highest risk they've ever seen in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. 43 death threats. Because I was targeting the criminal elements, going into dealing with the criminal underworld. I was utilizing the types of technology. I worked closely with the NYPD. I actually formed a bilateral agreement with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the NYPD. They assisted me in forming the gender-based violence unit. That was gender-based violence was a terrible thing here in Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks to the NYPD, we formed the gender-based violence unit, the social media monitoring unit, the type of technology that put an end to kidnapping. We started raiding places with persons being held against their will and arresting kidnappers. Before and after me, we've gone back to persons having to pay ransom. We put an end to home invasions. It was the highest visibility. People have started complaining, seeing too many blue lights, too many sirens. You got a response within less than 5 minutes. We had dashboard cameras on vehicles, body cameras on police officers had body cameras, tasers, pepper spray, minimum use of force policy. Customer service training in the police was transformed to the point that when I arrived police trust and confidence was 14%. It went up to 59%. When I left a year later, it went back down to 8%. So there are things that, and it is unfortunate that the government, they decided to bypass all of this because of their unfortunate political agenda. And you can't, sometimes I put my hand on a Bible on 3 occasions, Laverne, as a soldier, as a politician, and as a commissioner of police. And everyone I remember, it's not about serving politicians. It's about serving your God, your country, and the people that country. And that's why I have stepped on toes. I have caused little hiccups. The government, there's nothing that there's going to be a concern as it pertains to to my life, as it pertains politically. But I mean, anything can actually happen. But as I said, I have dedicated my life to serve my country, and I will continue to do so. The country that they do not want to be divided. It's not to knock the PNM. The PNM is a very good political party. They've done so much for Trinidad and Tobago, as the UNC have done. But right now, there's something called the Rowley PNM. He was just on a political meeting, and for 45 minutes, he spent 43 minutes attacking me. I have become his center of attraction, and his Minister of National Security, same thing. So they spend all their time targeting me with spitting lies, wrong information. Even I was providing firearms for law-abiding citizens, for the police officers, so that when they left home, they will have, when they left their station, they have something to protect them. They put a stop to that. So there is a strong degree of concern. If you're in Trinidad and Tobago now, if you're held with a taser illegally, that's 750,000 TT you pay. If you're held with an automatic firearm, you have to pay 40,000 TT. It shows the mind-boggling decisions being made by this government. So my intention is to ensure I put focus on the security of law-abiding citizens over that of the criminal elements. The scales of justice have indeed been tilted towards supporting the criminal elements in this country. I intend to tilt that scale of justice.
But let's face it, the government knows that there's rampant crime. Why would they not want to? It's in their best interest if they want to be reelected, if they want to be seen as being powerful and helping the citizens. It's in their best interest to deal with crime. So why do you think they would let it run rampant?
I'll tell you why. In February last year, as a political leader of the NT, I offered to assist the government because I'll always be a patriot before being a politician. I said, let me help you because they were really going downhill fast after I left. And then Kamala Prasad Visesas, the opposition leader, she did likewise. And the man is just exactly the reason being is exactly what Patrick Manning said. His arrogance, his hatred, his bitterness, he can never swallow his pride and be humble enough to say, look, I need help. Let's work it together. You will think, Laverne, exactly what you said. Had he accepted our support and our advice, if it worked, he will be able to show, look at the type of person that I am. I took the higher ground. I took support from the opposition leaders, and look, crime has been reduced. Look at the type of leader this country needs, and he would have been successful. And if we helped him and crime did not go down, he could then have said, well, look, it makes no sense to change the government because they were there supporting me and they did nothing. You will think that anybody who wants to be in government, but remember, Keith Rowley was very instrumental in the government collapsing in 2010 when Patrick Manning removed him from cabinet, and he said he was a man totally out of control. And with that, the rabble rousing, and with Patrick Manning, he said, look, he needs to call a snap election because he couldn't keep on having individuals like that in his government. And Keith Rowley didn't mind. It caused the collapse of the government. It caused the collapse of the PNM. Keith Rowley has done it then in 2010, and he's going to do it again in 2025 because his hatred, his bitterness, his arrogance, his personality, it supersedes doing what is right for the country or what is right even for his government to remain. And the government is going to pay that price by being annihilated come 2025.
Okay, so now I have to play devil's advocate, and don't have any skin in the game. I'm
Of
not
course, yes.
interested in that. But what about his supporters who say he is under pressure because there is, as you know, that heavy gang element, that heavy criminal, that heavy cartel element, that his hands are tied? You would know better than anybody whether or not a situation like that is true. I don't know. These are things that people say, you read on social media, other people, say that there is a group in Trinidad that really control things, and his hands are tied. Is that
Well,
possible?
what I would say to that is I will ask for those just go back on and you do the research in 2013 and 2015 when I was Minister of National Security. I told the criminals exactly what time of day it is. I formed the National Security Special Operation Group, the National Operations Center. That National Security Special Operation Group was similar to again SWAT. The Operation Command Center, the Community Comfort Patrol, the Rapid Response Unit, and it was the highest reduction in serious crime in 31 years. So, and I push heavily to ensure that gangs will not get state contracts, even within my own government. As soon as I got the intelligence, I immediately stood firm, even with persons within my own government, to say I am not accepting it. The same way that you all are very stringent when it is you don't negotiate with terrorists. I said, once I'm in a government, we are not going to negotiate and give state contracts to gangs, because when you do that, you give them $5 million to build a $50,000 box train. They use the funds and the profit not to assist the community, but to purchase more firearms, to put payoff and to bribe police officers to protect them. They put hits on other gang members to get their state contracts. That's what has caused the problem. When I was commissioner of police, I saw the same situation, and I told Keith Rowley that. And he had the audacity to say, well, gangs have a right to apply for state contracts. And what I said is, okay, let's look at the United States. You know somebody who's a terrorist, you have intelligence to say that they're terrorists. Because you don't have enough evidence to arrest them, you're not going to give them a contract to pay in the White House. It's common sense. So for you to say, well, if it is we don't have evidence to arrest them, they have a right to get state contracts. Madness, because you know what they're going to do. And therein lies the problem. So his hands being tied, if that is the case, it shows that he has succumbed to the criminal elements. And I gave the assurance to the country that I will not bow to criminal elements, which is why there were those 43 death threats to me and my family. So within the next year or so, when the government changes, I'm going to take the fight to them. I'm going to immediately impose that Anti-Terrorism Act, where it is that a gang member now, presently, if he's held with an automatic weapon, he can get bail the very next day for like the equivalent of 5,000 US. This anti-gang turning them into terrorists, which they really are, because they have the type of weaponry that can actually cause undue harm, damage, and kill innocent civilians and can affect national security. That makes them a terrorist. It's 25 years in prison, no bail. It will now allow those persons who provide the support for them, who house them, who bring in the weapons for them, even the politicians who may give them state contracts. All of them now, it's 20 years in prison immediately. It will also allow the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force to be utilized. They have not been used in the last 30 years other than one occasion, which was the SOE in 2011. We can now use those 5,000 members to have clinical targeted strikes to neutralize those gang members, similar to what Jamaica has right now, known as the Zone of Special Operations. So that is how I operate. I operate very tactical, very strategic, using my military training, using my political training, and find an avenue to neutralize the enemy. And the gangs are their enemies of the state, and that is how you deal with it. The majority of the law-abiding citizens in the country support what I am saying. It is not abuse of authority. It is not abuse of or taking away the constitutional rights of anyone. But the most fundamental right of any law-abiding citizen is the right to live.
Yeah, certainly. Again, I mean, it's so sad to be hearing that this is what people are dealing with, and this is the topic of conversation when people are trying to feed their families and just live and exist. But Gary, stand by. We're going to take another commercial break. You're watching Win, a special edition with Gary Griffith, and we'll be right back after this.
Whatever the time of year is, I get my hydration from Dave's coconut water. Dave's, quenching your thirst all year long.
Look, we there, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Welcome back to WIN. This is a special edition. I'm your host, Laverne McGee. Thank you so much for staying with us. I am joined now by Gary Griffith, having a very intense conversation about the crime in Trinidad. And I know that most people know how bad it is. And again, our viewers in Miami, Toronto, New York, wherever you're watching from, I'm sure you've heard of it. And the people in Trinidad and Tobago have had to deal with this and live with this. So crime is what we're focusing on, obviously. But Gary, I have to ask you, you're saying that when you were commissioner of police, that you had it under control. There was more trust in the police force. You were seeing some progress that all fell apart. You're saying that the current government doesn't want to work with you. Why then are people voting PNM? Why do they keep voting for Prime Minister Rowley?
Yeah, well, again, as I said, so when we have that two-party system, the PNM, they have a very strong base, and it's split down the center. What the PNM, they are very good at is to divide the country, and every single thing they will try to use race. They will always try to use something to cause one base to solidify, circle the wagons to support one party. And then obviously the other side will then do the same. So politicians have gone out of their way to divide the country. I intend to do just the opposite. I intend to unite the country and trying to ask the country, when you make that decision, don't make the decision based on ethnic composition or whatever, to feel that your political party is some type of a lodge that represents your ethnic group. No, you got to look for the people who will give you the best plans, the best policies, and the political will to provide you with your rights. And that is where that third party comes in. So without that third party, the PNM are very good at mobilizing by using race. They divide the country. They target the opposition and speak about corruption and massive corruption. They spoke about corruption for 5 years with the People's Partnership. And I can't recall that anybody has been charged as it pertains to corruption in that 5-year period. But they work it well. They say the same thing over and over and hope that people will believe it. And that's where they circle the wagons. It's changing now. So whereas you have, as I said, you got 40% support the PNM, 40% support the UNC. There are 20% of persons who look for the bigger picture. And that's where I come in. And that 20% has already agreed that the PNM needs to go. And then there's half of that PNM's 40% that are also a little frustrated by what they're seeing. And that's why it is half of them would have also
Okay,
shifted
a
across.
little frustrated. I'm going to cut you off there because what you're saying makes perfect sense in a perfect world. Again, it's not just Trinidad. You see it in the United States. You see it in other places where people will vote simply because that is who they are aligned with, even if it hurts themselves personally, because they want their own people in power. That this is nothing new. But how are you going to break through that? Because let's face it, whether it's Trinidad or the United States or wherever, there is a power base. There's a base of people that have decided that they would rather have their party in control, even if it works against their own best interests. And that seems to be the case in Trinidad because everybody's affected by crime. Everybody. So why would you vote into power if the current party is indeed responsible? And like I said, I'm not saying whether it is or not. WIN is not saying whether it is or not. But if they are responsible or they're not, or they're being negligent, why do they keep getting voted in power? That means because their base is so strong. How are you going to change the mind of this strong base? And PNM, of course, is a strong political party, regardless. That's going to take a lot to do that.
Yeah, that's why I tend to differ. So what happens? As I said, you're correct. That base is solidified. The worst the PNM ever was. I mean, when they destroyed the country in 1986, it was the worst the PNM could have ever been. But and the NAR won 33-3. PNM still got 180,000 votes out of just about 600,000 odd. That shows how strong they are. That base is. In 2010, when there was Kamla Mania and the Congress of the People with that third constituency, which I speak about, that I am now the political leader of, that 140,000 Congress of the People votes joined with the UNC's 220 odd thousand, but the PNM still got about 240,000 odd. So it means that base is always there. You're not going to fight that base. However, that 20% down the center, those persons who have been known as the ONR in 81, the NAR in 91, the COP in 2007, and now the NTA, that 100 to 150,000 when they join and work and form an alliance against the PNM, they are annihilated. So you take that 150, you divide by the 41 constituencies, that's 3,000 extra votes. Add that to the UNC votes. PNM, they lose the marginal seats. And that's what happened in 2010 to 2012. And we saw it in the local government election, where because of how they have these seats, they made it look like, oh, it was 7-7. But it was 190,000 votes to 130. PNM were annihilated because, and that is what, and if you take the 39 constituencies and you superimpose it on the map to pertaining to the people who voted in the local government election, we are yet again way ahead in the marginal seats. So that's what I bring to the table. It's not to try to bring or to try to influence those persons. Sometimes the political leader of the PNM could probably go downtown and shoot people in cold blood, and you'll still get 150, 200,000 votes. It's not going to change that. So it's not my mindset is to change those persons. If Keith Rowley says right now, I love Gary Griffith, they're all going to wave and say that they love me. That is how they are. It's not people, it's sheeple. And because everyone in PNM loved me. And as soon as Keith Rowley said he didn't like me again, many of them changed. That is how it is. But it's not to focus on those individuals that blindly follow a political party. It's that 150,000 who are politically independent. And that's what we have. That's when ONR joined with the ULF, they annihilated the PNM in 86. When A.N.R. Robinson's party joined with the UNC in 1995, they defeated the PNM. And then again in 2010.
But Gary, don't you think by saying that you feel that his supporters are sheeple, or however you want to frame it, maybe they don't feel that way, and maybe they feel insulted by you saying that, so they won't vote for you?
Well, yeah, and they could keep it because listen, because 130,000 people still voted for a political party that went out of their way to interfere with a process to remove a commissioner that everybody supported. A political party went out of their way to remove a commissioner that was reducing crime. And 130,000 people still voted for that. They voted for a government that every single time that they're in government, from 1991 to 1995, crime went up every year. Guess who was in government? From 95 to 2001, it went down every year to less than 100 murders per annum. Guess who was in government? Not the PNM. PNM takes back over from 2001 to 2010, it goes up every year. 2010 to 2015, PNM is not in government, it goes back down every year. 2015 to 2024, it has gone up every year other than my last year and a half when I was commissioner. So it shows that implementation of government policies is a catalyst to crime reduction. But if you as a parent could say, look, even though PNM stays in power, it can be a greater chance of my wife being murdered, my daughter being raped, my son being kidnapped, and you still want to vote for people like that. That's why I will call you sheeple, because you don't care about your family, you don't care about your loved ones, you don't care about your assets, because you are blindly supporting a lodge to say that I must support PNM till I'm dead. I support a party till you die. You support your football team till you die, like how I support Manchester United and I've suffered for the last 10 years. That's what you do. You don't support political parties. You support the best people available at the time to serve you. And that 150,000 will have the shift. The others, I give you the promise, each and every one of them, when it is we're in government, they will appreciate and accept the fact that at least we are there and we are going to make their life better.
Okay, so we've talked about the people in the middle, the 20%. We've talked about the PNM supporters. What about UNC, and you of all people who played a prominent role in that party? What about those people? Why are they that? I mean, if all of them voted for you, if they're not happy with UNC and they're not happy with their political leader and they voted for you, so what's the situation with them? They like crime too?
No, well, again, the fact of the matter is that the UNC was a part to play in the People's Partnership, even though I was Minister of National Security and Security Advisor. So it was a team. And so team UNC with Gary Griffith at the time played a big part to the highest reduction in serious crime in 31 years. And that's what we're going to do again. So it's not a one-man show. So it's not that I can go in there on my own. So it's definitely not me. The UNC is a political party that has their own leadership. They have their base, and that base is very solid. It is just like the PNM's base. But as I said, when you add that third party, it spells disaster for the PNM. So there's going to be that type of dialogue. And people were concerned that there was that fragmentation, the lack of trust or the lack of respect that the Congress of the People had in 2010 to 2015. I would put it as bad leadership by the Congress of the People, not the UNC. And so I intend to give the assurance to that 150,000, those floating voters, I intend to represent you. I intend to make sure there's good governance. I intend to make sure that there's going to be no corruption, that we are going to look at every single cent that is spent. One of the best ways to deal with an economy is not just by pumping money, but by reducing wasted expenditure whilst not affecting productivity. We have seen so much of it. Right now, Keith Rowley has now just thrown out of the blue. He's going to put $100 million and give it to the Defense Force to give to rural communities. You know what that is? That is pumping funds back into certain elements involved of criminal elements to give them state contracts yet again. When you play with filthy animals, you're going to get fleas. And that's what the PNM they've been good at.
What's the advantage to him of doing that? What does he get out of that?
It solidifies his base to get ready for the election. It mobilizes the base of the PNM. So go to those areas that have been hard hit, that they have ignored, that have totally fed up of him. He needs to win them back because you need a foundation to get into a general election. So he's going to try to throw money into them and hope that they will say, okay, well, I was a PNM till I die all the time. Let me go back and support because I'm getting a couple $1,000s here. They try to buy an election. It is not going to work this time. There are many persons in the PNM, they are fed up. They're not fed up of the PNM, they are fed up of the Rowley PNM. The same way it is that they were fed up of Manning in 2010, they are going to send a loud and clear message to Keith Rowley, similar to what happened in the local government election.
So before we go, we are running out of time, but I want to go back to the UNC supporters, because if they know that their party's not going to win, they haven't won since Kamala Prasad-Bissessar was in power. Like you said, maybe they are UNC till they die, whatever. What advantage do they have if you have a person who's an expert in crime, who you of all, like I said, to have somebody at that level, I'm not being biased, but going by your skill level, you're untouchable when it comes to that. So why wouldn't UNC supporters automatically just say, well, UNC can't provide this. Why don't we just go with this middle part, this third party? Why wouldn't they do that?
I'll tell you, because the UNC also has that similar type of base where they are very loyal to the point that they'll never vote for any other party.
They're loyal, but they're not in power. I understand PNM supporters because they're in power. So most people want their party in power. If their party's in power, you're going to support. But UNC is not in power. They're not getting anything out of it. They're not getting any handouts. They're not getting any favors. They're not getting anything because their people aren't in power. So what? So why can't? What is it that you can do to make them see that and support you?
And on two occasions, that third party, on 3 occasions, that third party got that perception that they could do that. And the ONR tried it in 1981, and they didn't shift that ULF votes into 1981 held, and PNM got more seats. In 1991, the NAR, who had that third constituency, they got 127,000 votes. So the ONR got 91,081, no seats. The NAR tried the same thing in 1991. They got 127,000 votes. The UNC got 100, just around a little more than that, and they got 12 seats, 12 or 14 seats. The Congress of the People tried the same thing, thinking the same thing, that UNC will come and join us and PNM will join us because we had the best. I was a candidate as well for the Congress of the People. We got 147,000 votes. They didn't get a seat. It's not going to happen. It's like saying in the United States, look at those two leaders they have in the Republicans and the Democrats. Let's form that third party and just forget. It's not going to happen. That base is so solidified, and there might be nothing bad in it. That is what makes great political parties. So that UNC base is going to hold that 150, 200,000. They are going to keep voting for the UNC, especially in the central and southern area. The corridor is what matters. The St. Joseph, the Tunapunas, Lupino Bonnier, Arima, La Hoquita Talparo, Darby O'Meara. Those were all the seats that we won when we worked with the UNC and San Fernando West and Sangre Grande. And that is what is going to happen again. So I'm not here to try to grab and steal UNC voters. If you want to hold on to your base, fine. What I'm forming is a strategic alliance. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. We form we circle the wagons. We form a strategic alliance. We are going to have a very great government in a year's time.
Well, it all sounds good on paper, right? But when it's time to vote, it's another story. But Gary, we're out of time. But thank you so much for breaking this down. Like I said, I know this is not your typical interview, but we have viewers from everywhere: Miami, London, New York, Toronto. And I really wanted people to have a good understanding because when you're on the outside looking in, it seems obvious. There's a heavy crime problem. You got a guy who's a specialist in crime, he knows all about it. Why not elect him? But there's a whole lot more to the story, and you've shared so much of it with us. So thank you so much for joining us, Gary. I'm sure we'll have you back again. We talked a little bit about the lawsuit. Let's face it, lawsuits take years sometimes to resolve. So I didn't spend too much time on that because it's probably won't be resolved until after elections. But you've given us some good insight, and you have certainly shared some things that probably a lot of people didn't know. So thank you so much for joining us this evening.
It's indeed my pleasure.
And thank you, everybody. You're watching WIN. We appreciate you tuning in. And of course, you can always go online, send your comments, go to win.com, and we will see you the next time. Have a good night.
Whatever the time of year is, I get my hydration from Dave's coconut water. Dave's, quenching your thirst all year long.